Shalom, Erev Tov, good evening from Jerusalem, Israel. This is Mr. Lowell Joseph Gallen, founder of the Root and Branch Association, Limited. Welcome to episode 2 of our new monthly Ancient Roots Mothering Seminar, hosted by colleagues Mrs. J. Rivkah Asoulin, Mrs. Chava Dagan, and Mrs. Gilla, Weiss. And now, without further ado, I hand over the mic to our 3 co-hosts.
Okay. You want me to start here, Rivkah? All right, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're so excited. This is number 2 already. I can't believe it's like rolling like a snowball. We thought about it. We talked about it. We dreamed about it. And then it just kind of started happening. And every week it just seems to roll on its own, right? We just feel like it's totally up to God and he's bringing all of us together. So thank you so much for joining us. I just want to give a little introduction. Welcome to Ancient Roots Mothering. Grab a cup of herbal tea and cozy up in a chair. For the next hour or so, we'll dive into our collective traditional Bina Based mothering. It comes from our past, propels us into our future, and holds us to our source. As mothers for thousands of years, we have deep knowledge and wisdom that has either been forgotten or pushed under for the sake of progress. But we are lighting the candle once again and both shine the light on our truth as well as use this practical wisdom to shine light onto the world. So welcome and thank you. And I'm so excited to be with everybody.
Hi, okay. Tonight's topic, thank you, Chava, for the beautiful introduction. We're going to be playing with some different introductions and you can vote on it and see if you want any of them to stay, or if you want us to just make a new introduction every single time and be surprised. Whatever floats your collective votes. Tonight's discussion will be about practical parenting. So many times we are asked how we apply these thoughts, ideas, ways of living, our intuitive wisdom, otherwise known as Bina, how we apply this to our families on the ground in a practical manner. So we like to open up with a story. And for me, one of the most successful parenting hacks or pro tips that I discovered along the journey was pulling the children close when you want to push them away. Very difficult, easier said than done. I have a couple examples. One that stands out in my mind is when, and you may hear them in the background now, serving themselves dinner and making noise, so my apologies. I had a child who was, I guess people would say very difficult. And some of those people, or one of them might even be me, depending on the day that you asked. So very difficult, a lot of challenges, and very destructive. The kind of kid who would climb up walls, destroy everything, make messes, run out of the door as a toddler, you know, it figured out how to undo the lock and run straight into the street, this sort of thing. And on many occasions, he would, when he would get upset, destroy whatever room he was in. So that could be flipping chairs, flipping tables. We're talking about a small child. So between the ages of 3 and 6, I would say. And obviously I explained that this was unacceptable, and I yelled and I screamed and I, you know, tried every possible method. Until one day, and when a child's trashing your house and destroying things that you love, like a favorite book that you've had since you were a child, or the vase or whatever, you want to push the child away. You want them to get away from you. You don't want to have anything to do with them. You're angry at them. You have a lot of feelings and a lot of emotions come up inside. And I'm trying to name a few of them, and my colleagues will be better at naming them than I am. But those are good signs. Those are good keys that you're in the right place to employ this particular method, when you want to push the child away. So in this moment, my son was destroying the house. And instead of any of the other methods I had tried before that had failed, I ran to him, I grabbed him in my arms, I held him close, and I said, you're really angry. You're really, really angry. And started giving a name to his feelings, but just being there and being present with him and respecting him and seeing him as a person and seeing him as a person that I love and that I'm responsible for, and one of mine and one of my team. Instead of an us versus them, it's all us. Same sort of thing. I think this fight was particularly with another sibling or something, you know, whatever. And I'm the mother of both of these children. And so keeping that in mind and just naming his feelings for him was the first thing, and saying, I love you. I'm here for you. I see that you're really angry. You know, my friend used to say, all your emotions are falling out of your emotion basket. Let's put them back in. I love it. But there's a noticeable shift. It's something very small and very practical on the ground, but there's a noticeable shift with the child and internally when you take this type of approach. So if I was yelling at the child, how dare you? I've told you a million times you're not allowed to throw down chairs and whatever, okay? I've just inflamed this adversarial relationship with my child or between the brothers or siblings. But when I go and I hug him and make physical contact, look into his eyes, get down to his level, let him know I see his feelings. He may be so upset that the words aren't even able to come out. And so articulating the feelings for him gives him a path. It gives him a dugma, an example about what I expect from him in the future, to be able to say those words, to be able to do those things, and also to let him know I love him. This behavior isn't acceptable. I'm not going to let him do it anymore. So there's still a clear boundary, but I love him and I'm here for him right now. And let's figure this out together. So I wanted to start with that story, and maybe we can jump into fighting and acting out right away. Gilla and Chava, maybe you have some, maybe, possibly, your children have on occasion thought or acted out in some way.
So my youngest at this point is 13. He has Down syndrome. And the next one above him is 18. I'm a grandmother, so my kids are older. However, you never stop parenting. You never stop being a parent. I love Rivkah. I absolutely love that every time you tell it to me, I feel tears welling up, because as a young mother, intuitively, I connected with nurtured parenting, gentle parenting. And I know Chava and Rivkah, the three of us, we may not have grown up this way as many of you. We may have had well-meaning parents, but we didn't grow up nurtured parenting. And as a young mother, I yearned for that. And I read books and I attended classes. And sometimes things fell into place and I felt that I grew and I was achieving this and things were flowing. And then there would be a bump or more than a bump. And I'd be, what's going on here? One of the things, as Rivkah explained this, that I learned, and it took me a while, is, and I speak about this before, is the power of touch. So the words, there's so many amazing techniques, practical techniques, toolkits, philosophies on nurtured and connected parenting. However, never forget that the words alone are not enough. Touch is of utmost importance. That tactile touch is what can awaken the endorphins, tells a child, a person, an adult, you're cared for, you're loved, and it's the same thing when a baby is just born and mom picks up her newborn baby. The most important thing is for baby to, we call it tummy to tummy, skin to skin. We give it all these nice names. But essentially, if baby is laying across mom, anyway, vertical, horizontal, anywhere in between, with the tactile touch, tummy to tummy, body to body, baby is at peace and baby will nurse. And it's the same with young kids. And I would add that it's the same with older kids and adults. In fact, sometimes even more so, because as our kids grow, they tend to be not as physically needy, or so it seems. But a hug or a touch is so important. They need it. They may tell us they don't need it, but they do. So I just wanted to add that. Chava?
Yeah, same tactic. You could call it a tactic. If my two, like, I have 6 boys, I've mentioned this before, and there's roughhousing going on all day, all night long until they go to bed. I let it happen. It's something that they need. It's part of their whatever development, you could say, or it just makes them happy. But if it ever gets to be, you know, too much, maybe the tempers are rising, or it's just getting, you can see it's going to escalate. As I will walk over and put myself down into the one who might be more aggressive or whatever, and literally, just like Rivkah said, hug. I come from the back usually, and that way his arms are kind of pinched to his body. And I just hug, and like Rivkah talked about this too. So your mouth is right there next to their ear, and you just start gently giving soothing, you know, I love you. What's going on? How are you doing? Do you want some water? Just talking and bringing the whole, you know, escalation down. And you do that while you're hugging them. If I sat face to face and told him, calm down, do you want some water? It doesn't have the same effect. When you're there and you're wrapping your whole body, your warmth, the energy, everything that's coming, it works like that. Then all of a sudden they say, yeah, you know what? I am thirsty. Ah, right. I'm going to go. And then, you know, their brain just gets right out of that aggravating kind of emotional stance that just immediately comes down. So I use that all the time. And it could be for anything. If 2 of them are fighting, or if one is just mad at everybody. Sometimes they'll wake up on the wrong side of the bed and they just, you know, everything makes them mad. Everything makes them cry. Everything just, they don't even have to have a reason. They'll just start yelling at people or throwing things down, whatever. And you just walk over immediately and hug them. Do you need some water? Are you thirsty? I love you. What's going on? And then that's it. It's done. It's just done. Yeah, I really am thirsty. That's a big thing, actually. A lot of times they're just dehydrated and they don't realize it. They're so, there's something aggravating them. There's something bothering them. And it turns out that they're just thirsty or hungry or whatever. But a lot of times with us, yeah, I know you guys have the blood sugar thing. With us, it's that they didn't even think about it and they're running around outside in the sun, whatever, and they come out and they forget to drink, and that's what it is. So it comes down sometimes to a very physical thing, which is just drink the water.
You know, my son told me this great story. I have 4 sons, thank God. Chava's got 6. Gilla's got how many do you have, Gilla? 5. All right.
Boys, 3 girls. Leina.
Okay. So one time, you know, boys and girls, I mean, maybe we can talk about this later if there's any interest. They play differently. They interact differently. Boys, a group of boys together and a group of girls are not going to be engaging in the same play or the same behavior. But anyway, I had 4 boys in a row and they were just beating on each other, which they seemed to love. They're laughing, but they're just punching each other and they're jumping on each other. And one of them sitting there doing nothing. And another one just jumps on his head and starts punching him out of nowhere. And I was watching this go on. And again, they're mostly laughing until it gets out of control. And that's when mommy steps in. And the more you step back and let that happen, the more acute sensitivity you'll develop about when you do need to step in. That being said, one time I was watching my boys fight, and one of my littlest ones, I said, why do you guys do this? Like, just kind of in awe and a bit mystified. Why do you guys do this? Why are you guys always beating on each other? And one of the sons, mid punch, he turns to me and he says, Mommy, have you ever seen baby animals? said, yeah, why? And he's like, well, this is what baby animals do. Cubs need to beat on each other and animals need to wrestle. And I was just like, okay, carry on then. But that's something that I keep in my mind all the time when I see the boys fighting. And also we were calling it a tactic, but it really isn't a tactic. It's a tool in the toolkit is what it is. I think the issue of emotional investment is critical here, because what I find for myself, and of course for other parents, but I'm speaking about me, is that I used to be, as a new parent, very emotionally invested in everything that my kids did and everything that happened. Like when they were fighting, I was emotionally invested in it. And therefore, like, oh my gosh, my kids are fighting, I've got to jump in there. When in reality, I needed to back away more and really understand the dynamics of what were going on. As my son so succinctly explained to me, they were wrestling, and wrestling is important for their development. It's important for male bonding. And so me getting involved in that and saying, you know, we don't fight and use words and this and that, I was actually making a mistake. I was actually closing off a healthy space that they needed to develop as men, as boys. Of course, this is something that came up in another show or interview or something we did, I don't remember, where people were talking about gender roles and teenagers who believe that they're gender fluid or on the GLBTQ plus spectrum or something like this. These are some of the ways that we may be confusing our children by acting and imposing some kind of societal standard instead of taking a step back and observing and trying to figure out exactly what is problematic and what is perhaps normal behavior.
So there's the emotional aspect of it. And then we alluded to the actual physical. A lot of times it's just, they don't have enough of something. Like I know Rivkah's family, she's mentioned it many times, they have a blood sugar. If they don't snack, you know, or get their meals in on time, as when the blood sugar drops, anything can happen. It can be an emotional outburst, or it can be tiredness, or, you know, whatever. And again, with mine, dehydration is a big thing as they're running around on the farm all day. So just addressing those things, I don't know if you guys want to touch on that, but it's huge.
Yeah, I'm really happy to touch on that, because anytime we do parenting hacks, tips, speak to anyone, and I myself, especially as a young parent, was always anticipating some, you know, magical formula or some words, you know, these divine words that I hadn't heard before. And at the end of the day, I think a lot of parenting comes down to the basics, starting with nurture, working on ourselves. But the basics in our family, we call it hangry. We're hungry, so we're angry, we're hangry. And a lot of us get very hangry. And once you're hangry, you don't necessarily identify in a cool manner. Okay, I'm hungry, therefore I'm angry. It's just, you know, boom, boom, boom. So I cannot emphasize food and snacking enough. My kids all remember that we would be late everywhere because I would not get in the car without snacks, water bottles, change of clothing, towels. Who knows, there's going to be a flood, you know. But food still is. I don't get into my car without a snack. And I always remind people, especially on this Zoom, many of us are sipping tea. We have our water. We may have a banana that we're going to, you know, we graze all day long as humans, yet we forget that our kids need to graze as well. So having set times doesn't suit everybody's metabolism. If your child only gets snack at 10, but at 9:30 their blood sugar is plummeting, game over. They're going to be out of whack and misbehaving in whatever situation, you know, they're supposed to be holding it all in. So I cannot emphasize it enough. Food, 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 snacks. And we as a culture rely heavily on grains and prepared snacks, whether it's cereals, crackers, and it's very convenient. It really is. But sometimes it takes a moment or two to just think. And I understand everybody has different dietary, philosophies and how they think healthy is healthy. But proteins and fat go a long way. So while it's easy to reach for a granola bar and it's yummy, we might do better by reaching for a sandwich with butter and cheese, or a cheese stick, or a banana and a nut butter or something like that. So and we can make things in advance, or today you can buy things in bite sizes and little packaging, and just avocado and bananas, so easy, food on the go. You can take rice cakes or crackers with you and always carry a pocket knife or a plastic knife, and voila, you have a whole meal there. And that's going to calm everyone down. So when kids are misbehaving, we as mothers have this unique opportunity to work on ourselves. It's not easy, like Rivkah said, because we're emotionally invested, and we react and we project. Oh my goodness, my child is throwing things. They're going to grow up and be violent. Oh my goodness, my child just bit someone. We project and we're devastated. So we have to take a few moments to feed ourselves, whether it's positive breathing and thoughts and food and drink for ourselves, and learn to react less. I say to myself, it's not personal, it's personal, it feels personal. They may even be telling me how upset they are with me. They may use choice words, and I have to work on myself. It's not personal, it's not personal, it's not personal. And so we have this unique opportunity to grow. And even if we haven't got it when they're 3, there's 13, there's 17, there's 23, it's never too late. So that's really my take, is the food and the continuing as mothers and parents to grow.
We talk about projecting, and it made me think of my second story that I wasn't sure I was going to share, because he's older now, so I guess enough years have passed. But another one of my sons would get really angry, and he would grab a kitchen knife and threaten to kill his sibling. So, and start running around. He was little, like 5, 6. Okay. And, I remember the first time it happened, deliberately stopping, taking a breath, and remembering that the way I need to handle this is with detachment. So saying something like, going up to him and taking the knife out of his hand and saying, "You can't use that knife. That's a dairy knife. You can't use this knife. Humans aren't kosher." I would have all these sorts of different one-liners that would come out, almost like some kind of sitcom in our house. But it was actually it's a very important tool in the toolkit, is that kind of detachment, because I can say I've seen, and I'm sure I was in the early parenting years, but parents like reacting to that. I talked about this in another show, going, "Oh my gosh, my kid is a serial killer in the making," and just screaming, "No!" and, jumping across and throwing everything out of the way and shaking the kid and taking them to psychology, and just hang on a second. It doesn't have to go that direction. It may. I'm not saying your child will never need a psychologist or something like this, and I'm not saying that there aren't dangerous criminals that that were once children that might be your children or something like this. But it seems like an extreme level to jump to, like, as a first step in evaluating a situation with a child. So in that situation, I did this many times, and it would diffuse, but it still wasn't getting there. And so to get into the hangry situation, one time when I actually took him and he was completely lashing out, and I did the same thing that Chava describes, that kind of hug from behind where I could pin his arms so that he could stop being destructive. He was punching and hitting and destroying, and but it wasn't like a, look, I'm hugging you. No. It was a real hug, a sincere hug with all my heart. But I did say, I'm not going to let you hurt me, and I'm not going to let you hurt yourself. I'm not going to let you hurt anybody else. And, I love you. I'm here for you. And I would, pet his arms, and I'd say, I love you. I love you. I'm not going to let you hurt me. I'm not going to let you hurt yourself. I love you. I'm here for you. When you're ready, we're going to talk about it. Just sit some more quietly and rubbing his arm. And again, I'm not going to let you hurt me, because, he's still trying to fight. I'm not going to let you hurt yourself. I love you. I'm here for you. We're going to talk about this. We're going to get through it. It's going to be okay. We're going to come out the other end. This is going to be fine. This is going to pass. All those calming things that we need to know in order to be adults in this world and to parent and to have relationships with other people. And I remember after about 45 minutes of that, because he was really persistent, but I held to it. And, 45 minutes of that. And I said, I remember at some point I started switching the mantra when I could tell he was listening more, and the tears were coming. And I said, this isn't you. This isn't who you are inside. You're a wonderful person. You're warm, you're caring, you're sensitive, you're kind, you're thoughtful. You want to throw a child against a wall when they're hurting your baby or hurting whatever, but you've got to work against that and just be, go into him, even if the baby's sitting there crying in a safe place, obviously, for the 30 minutes or 45 minutes this is going to take. But if you really solve it, then it's solved. And so I remember telling him, what do you think is causing this? What do you think the problem is? And I remember I just kind of was rocking him back and forth. And at some point he, I was up behind him at his ear, and he said, I'm hungry. And when you have your blood sugar drop so low, or you're dehydrated, like in Chava's family, sometimes you don't even feel the thirst or the hunger anymore. You just feel that secondary, the anger or the, out of controlness or whatever it is. But thank God he had calmed down enough to get to the place where he understood that he was hungry. And I said, okay, what do you want to eat? And he knew exactly what he wanted to eat. And so we went and we got that. And after he had eaten, I saw, after just a few bites of food, his whole body soften and everything calmed down. And when it happened, I knew we could talk. And then I sat next to him again. This was a young child, 5 or 6. And I said, let's make a deal. Anytime that I say you need to eat something, 3 bites, you get to tell me what it is you want to eat. But if you don't tell me, then you eat whatever I give to you, just 3 bites. Then you can tell me whatever you want. You can say whatever you want. We'll discuss whatever you want, but just 3 bites of food, because I think maybe this is low blood sugar. And that was the agreement we had, which lasted for about a year until he could start to manage himself better and was a bit older. And it worked every single time.
Another thing besides water and food is sometimes when things are getting, whatever the situation might be, sometimes I just pick them up if they're small enough and take them outside. The moment the sun, fresh air, as all of a sudden, everything that was just happening inside just whoop, right out. And that was, I didn't even have to do anything. I just picked them up and took them outside. And maybe it's the bird song, maybe it's the fresh air, I don't know. But that as another big one, fresh air and sun, just switches it around.
Water was our trick. In those early years, we talked in the last episode about homeschooling young children. And some of those times where, especially if you have a large family like we all do, the kids are just, screaming, crying, upset, tired, but not napping, whatever. Keeping snacks out, by the way, just to digress a minute, really important. Just some carrot sticks, peanut butter, whatever it is, just set it out on the table and have it there all the time. And just, make it available and refer to it over and over. But when things were getting really hairy, or I needed to keep kids awake because they were falling asleep at like 5 o'clock in the evening, or when it was too late to take a nap and then I'd be up all night, it's like, okay, let's get water. So that could be on the floor of the shower, just fill up a little, a bucket from the kitchen, or outside on the porch, or outside in the yard, or wherever it is. But that was always a way to bring peace to a hysterical child, crying child. Really effective.
I'd like to add something that I think pertains very much to today's kids, within the last 20, 30 years. And that is that our kids tend not to get much downtime. Unstructured play, they don't get downtime. They don't get time where essentially nothing is demanded of them. Time to just sit and, lihit bonen even, to just meditate, but to just daydream, call it what you want, to look at the sky, just time to be outside without a specific activity or a structure, Even we have so many amazing schools today, and schools of thought and philosophies and books and YouTubes and 101 activities to do with your kids outside, which are amazing. A forest school is a dream. However, the basics that our ancestors experienced, and we don't have to go back hundreds of years, is just allow them to get a stick and just to play with dirt, have them feel empowered that the seemingly nothing that they are doing is something, and it's huge. And I think especially in the Jewish community, there is so much pressure. We were going to discuss peer pressure, and I thought, let's take the opportunity before we get into peer pressure for our kids, peer pressure for us. It's huge. Every single parent, I'm sure all of us here, know exactly what I'm talking about. First of all, we are our own worst judges. Every mother and every father judges themselves. We lie in bed at night and go over the day's events, and we judge ourselves. If one of our kids bit someone, we immediately go to the program in our minds that says, is it something we did or is it something we didn't do, and project. So number one, we're our worst judges. Number two, we suffer from peer pressure, every single one of us, no matter what parenting technique or philosophy we adhere to, whether it's the most nurtured one. I have mothers who speak to me and they have done conscious parenting. And I have had moms who told me, I don't do it anymore. And I'm like, why not? Because I couldn't do it exactly that way, or I veered off the derech, or I think every technique, every tool, every philosophy, you need to take something from that and mold it and design it, weave it into your style and work with it, grow with it. So as parents, I can speak for myself, we're Balei Chava. And when our kids were younger, we wanted our kids to fit in, and we wanted them to have friends, and we wanted to be part of a community. And along with that came a lot of unspoken, unwritten rules and a lot of judgment as a parent. And it took a lot of courage, a lot of deep soul searching, and connecting back to my intuition to be able to say, you know what? We're getting off that train at the next stop. We're just not going through with that. And that's okay. It's okay to be different. You're different anyway. You like different things. You think differently. It's beautiful. It's okay. You can be in a community with 2,000 kids, but if some of those kids if there's bullying, the damage that is done to our children is worse than not having a social circle. And parents matter most. parents matter most. So we, again, have this unique opportunity. Connected, nurtured parenting is our ancient traditional heritage. And we have this unique opportunity to tap into that and work on ourselves and be there for our kids. So working on the relationship with our kids is huge. It's lifelong. It's their lifelong and our lifelong. And it's the most important thing that we can do, because we cannot provide a perfect environment, a perfect situation. Life happens, and our kids are going to be exposed to life. They're going to interact with life, and we need to be there for them. We were not given these divine souls, these gifts from God, to mold, to fit into a particular peg, to put through some kind of a machine to come out, conformed at the other end. Our prime job is to protect them. And that means body, mind, spirit. So forging that relationship any way we can, and it's not always easy. And we may be dealing with a teenager who's like, I got this, Ima. I don't need you anymore. Find a way. Find a way. You may have to learn their jargon. You may have to learn the way they talk. That's okay. Find a way. Give them a way out. It's not us and them. It's the relationship, because if they come upon things and they make choices that we wouldn't like them to make, they need to know that we're there for them. And hopefully, they will mature and they will grow as well. But it's not us. We don't need to judge. I did, I didn't do. Sometimes our kids have their own journey. In fact, all our kids have their own journey. And that might include hardships that we could not have foreseen. We cannot change it. And it's not our job to. Our job is to be there. So essentially, since they're little, and especially as teenagers is having like the twos again, the terrific twos, terrific teens. It's a whole new opportunity there. And it's going to be tried in ways that we might not have dreamed that we wanted these blessings, but it's an opportunity to grow and to really rely back on the relationship. How can we be close? How can we get close? And that's really my gift to all of you, is to say, as a parent who is still struggling, I still have 18, it's beautiful because I'm able to grow and learn even at this stage. So don't forget that.
Let me just add, we're talking about all of these tips, hacks, whatever, in dealing with these different situations. But just like Gilla said, it just keeps coming back to me, is all of that falls down onto the relationship with the child, between the parent and the child. So we're going to hit on bedtimes and peer pressure, like you talked about, and whatever we're going to talk about during this, whatever's left here, not much. But all of those things come back down to the relationship between the parent and the child. And it's so beautiful because that's the base of everything. And from there, you build this, miraculous, sometimes good, sometimes bad, it doesn't matter, but that relationship and then the world that it creates between you and your child, it helps, or I can say it's what creates the good, easy bedtime, troubles, the peer pressure and the tantrums and all of these things, because you have that relationship to build on from the foundation.
Once we're modeling the how we deal with peer pressure, once I believe, in my experience, once we've modeled that we're okay to stand up to peer pressure, we're okay with being different, we forge a path for the children to be able to be different as well, if they want. And so, you know, again, we all have teens as well. And they may not make the same choices as they move into adulthood, but we've given them the tools to know that they can go against the crowd and that they'll be okay. And they know that either way, they still have us. We're still there. It's, you know, you don't have to be like, oh, I don't know, did this, you know what? I won't give a fake example. I'll give a real example. I have a friend who has a mentally ill son who, when he was in his 20s, early 20s, he set their house on fire, destroyed everything, the pictures, the childhood memories, the mother and father's most precious drawings and jewelry and whatever, destroyed, went up in flames. And I talked with the mother about it, an extraordinary woman. Perhaps we'll have her here one day as a guest. But I talked with the mother about this, and she, of course, her son was in prison at that time. And she was talking with me about what the son had done. And I asked her, like, what is she doing? What's, you know, how do you respond to that as a mother? And she said, well, I go to the prison and I visit him and I encourage him to like be closer to Hashem and let him know how much I love him and tell him all the wonderful things that he's done in his life, you know? And I said, how could you do, like, she told me, like, I'm telling you privately, like, my whole world is destroyed. My house is destroyed. The insurance doesn't want to cover it because it was a family member who set fire, and like, they had nowhere to live, no money, no, like, disaster. And she's like, but I never show that to him because, you know, because like he's already got everyone in his life showing him what he's done wrong. He's got everything surrounding him showing him what a horrible thing he did. He's all alone. And I said, how can you do this? Like, how could you not tell him how you feel, share your feelings with him, yell at him, you know, reprimand, whatever. And she said, you know, it's my job to love him, isn't it? And it was her words still echo in my mind all the time, that if a mother could understand that there were natural consequences and her child is facing them, but between her and him, it's still, this is who you really are. You're an incredible person. Remember that time you did this amazing chesed for your sister, and you're what, in the midst of all that, there's one ray of light for this child who a young adult at this point to hold on to. And I asked her, do you think your child will ever come out of prison? And she said, I don't know. That isn't in my hands. But what is in my hands is that for the rest of my life, my job is to love him and to be there for him. And I believe that it was that ray of light that she cast into the prison cell that pulled him out of prison. And he's free. He's now living in society, and he lives on his own, and he moved into his own place, and he got like a second chance at life, and he's doing really well. You know, he's on medication for his mental illness and these other things, but he's doing really well. And I don't know if that could have happened if everyone had just been focused on reprimanding him and everything else. Anyway, we're happy to take questions in the chat. I know we're wrapping up on our hour. This is a really good time to bring in some questions. And maybe since we did touch on bedtime, we can see that one through a little bit. Do any of the esteemed ladies on the panel want to comment?
So I never made it like an intentional, it ended up that way, but from the very, very beginning of their lives, we had a nightly bedtime story. So everyone just had to get ready so we could all sit down and read a book before we all head off to bed. And if they weren't ready on time, which never really happened, but if they, like, I guess because they knew that if they weren't ready on time, Ema would fall asleep because Ema goes to bed early. So they just kind of always got themselves ready, brushing their teeth and getting whatever. And then we would sit down. And then after that story, everyone feels sleepy anyway. And so we went off to bed. And that was from the beginning until today. I never have to fight. I never have to argue. I never have to, you know, and if there's something, some big game or visitors or, you know, whatever it happens to be, they know that Ema's not going to read to them tonight. You have to get yourself to bed, and they do. They're responsible enough, but I never had issues with it just because I made that routine part of our day. So I don't really have a lot to add, but that's how it worked for me.
So I was never really big on schedules. I was never really into charts and stars and, you know, this at 7 p.m. you have to be here and at 6 you have to. That's my personality. However, if someone is very scheduled, they need to forge their way through that. But in the early years when I had, you know, maybe a tandem nursing a toddler and a newborn and a preschooler and, you know, a few older ones, it was really challenging bedtime, especially since my husband used to work really late and wasn't around for bedtime. So like Chava said, I just infused bedtime with the routine of the day. It was part of the day. And with the little ones, I used to bring everyone into my bed because like Chava said, Ema gets tired. I was always a night Ema, but I would be exhausted at 7:30, 8 p.m., you know. So I would always, first of all, start with bath time, which even 25 years ago would be infused with Epsom salts and lavender maybe, or, you know, lots of fun things, but it would be calming. So that would be number one. And then the little ones I would just take them to my bed. And the older ones, I would always try and lie next to a child. You know, once they're bigger and they don't want you to lie there, that's okay. But I would lie down and there would be stories as well. And in fact, some of my sons remember the stories that I actually made up because Ema doesn't always have a book. And, you know, so we have a character story that I made up and they became part of it as well. They were the characters in the story and we just, you know, it was very creative. We made it up on the fly and that's actually what they remember now. So it was really all about creating a cozy, warm, safe, nurturing environment. It was less about the clock and more about, I love you. Here's a kiss from me. Here's a hug. Here's Shema. Here I'm laying with you. You know, that's how you enter into your sleep and dream state, you know. And I think that's so important. That and waking up in the morning as well, you know, to a smile, if possible. But, you know, and I would often fall asleep with my kids, with the little ones. I would nurse, maybe, you know, hug the other one, and we'd all fall asleep. And I would probably wake up an hour or 3 later and then go down and maybe do dishes or prepare something for the next day. But I also, looking back, have fond memories of that really special, warm time that we spent together. And I have absolutely no regrets, even if they went to sleep later than they should have, even if we maybe all stayed up watching a video. That's really the nurturing. You can do it your way, but as long as they feel nurtured, it wasn't like you're not coming out of the room. There was no sleep training. You know, it was human touch. It was family. And I think, you know, you can design it to suit your schedule and personality type.
I love how both of you explain things. That's why I always love going after you've spoken, because you make it so clear how it's done. So for me, people would, you know, I would always hear parents like, bedtimes are horrible, and the yelling and the screaming and the anger and the, I need another glass of water, and then, you know, locking the kids in there. I remember going to a friend's house and she locked her kids in the room, these little kids, and they were begging for water in the bathroom. And she'd say, no, it's bedtime. And she was pulling her hair out. And then people would say, like, you know, isn't it awful, you know, bedtime? And I'd just be like, I don't have bedtimes. And I realize now, listening to both of you talk, how incredibly unhelpful that was for me to say something like that, because I never really explained. Then again, they never asked me, but I never really explained what that looked like. So there was a bedtime, meaning a phase of reality carved out in which one enters the bed. But there was never a time on a watch. Well, it's 9:30. Now is the locking the door time, and you've had your last water, and that never happened. So, like Gilla and Chava, it was the same sort of thing. What I realized after watching kids and people and human behavior was that people don't like being excluded, pushed out, like left to go somewhere alone while other people are like having conversation. Kids don't want to be pushed away. Like, I'm visiting with my friend. I'm doing whatever right now. You go over there and do something else. Get away from me. No, that doesn't feel good, and it's not connected. So I started, I never actually had bedtime, so I think I started right away with this. And when I also modeled like sleeping, I enjoyed sleeping. So, wow, I can't wait to get to bed. I can't wait till bed, like not, I can't wait till bedtime, I can't deal with you anymore. Not like that. Like, oh, I can't wait till we get to bed. 'Cause you know what? We've been so busy today. I just can't wait to curl up with you and like get all warm in the covers and, go to sleep, which for them was like, yeah, me too. Like, because it was together. It's like when kids pick up, you say, pick up your toys, and then there's like an adversarial relationship. Or you sit down on the floor with a child and say, let's put these away. Here, I'll help you. You put that one there, or can you hand me that one? I'll put that over there. You're with them, you're joining with them. Even if they're doing a lot of the things on their own, a lot of the work, you're right there with them. And we all, want someone to be with us and love us and close to us, especially for a child who's, kind of an extremely needy person at a young age. So I was against cribs. I was against cots, cribs, whatever. My babies never slept in one of those things. They slept right in bed with us. And I know it's, controversial and everyone was really upset about it, but it's really not. And if you look, the concern is SIDS and the studies that showed, babies, I don't know, not without any bedding and sleeping on their backs and whatever, but SIDS is a complicated situation. It's not so simple, and just a study or a few studies, in one direction doesn't mean that there aren't thousands of years of safe in practice. What's the word? In practice experience, evidence-based experience to look at. And so I did away with all that stuff. And it was very natural in the beginning, because when you breastfeed your babies, you'll want them close to you. I don't believe babies in general need to cry in order to be fed. I think when a mother's clued in, she will start to recognize that the baby's hungry before tears come out and the crying starts. That's an end stage hunger. So having the baby in bed with me really improved that bond and improved all those signals. And then it was just kind of a continuation. So again, large families, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? I've got to nurse the baby, and the other one is angry and doesn't want me holding the baby and wants me to be with them. That was it. We put mattresses, and our bedroom still looks this way, all over the bedroom floor. Mattresses from corner to corner. And everyone was welcome. No one got pushed aside. Yes, I'm nursing the baby, but here, you're going to lay next to me on this side. I'll prop myself up with some pillows and I'll read you a story. Or, sometimes I'll be curled up and I have multiple little kids, and I'll say, okay, you're on this arm, baby's here. You curl in between the space in my knees and you put your head on my outer thigh. I've got my thighs to one, my knees together to one side. You put your head on my thigh and I'll reach down and pet the hair of the child there and have the arm there. But it's never a battle for, precedence or attention at bedtime. It's always, just like Gilla and Chava said, a warm family moment. And as the kids start to grow up, that starts to move naturally into their own beds. It's typically not forced. I remember when I wanted my kids, but I waited until my kids could walk well, so that if they needed me, they felt empowered that they could just stand up and walk to my bedroom. I never wanted a kid to feel like they weren't able to get to me if they needed me. And so laying down with the child in the bed, I would go from bed to bed to bed to bed, one at a time. And I would say, okay, we're going to go by age. We'll start with the baby and go all the way up or whatever. We would, all the kids in one room. It's a great time to have conversations with the other kids while you're cuddling a little one or breastfeeding a little one. It's just creating that family atmosphere and making it feel warm and nice and not having any pressure for me about when the child had to actually fall asleep. I was in bed. If they want to get up and get water, fine, do what you want, but they're going to keep coming back to me because kids always keep coming back to their mom and I'm in bed. So eventually they'll go to sleep too. So anyway, I guess that's what worked for me. Are there any questions, thoughts, questions, comments, any neat things you want to share with us or any other topics? Oh my gosh, Abigail, you are amazing. You ask the best questions. Where does the father come in? I love these father questions. Who wants to take it?
I can just tell you what we sort of did. So as you know, when I had my first, I didn't know what, nothing. Like home birth was for me a brand new thing, but I was willing to do it and I wanted to do it. I knew it inside of me that I wanted to do it. But other than that, I didn't know anything. So I kind of kept developing with each child and with each day and with each whatever. The intuition is getting stronger and stronger. My husband, no, he's working. He leaves the rest up to me, which is perfectly fine with me because his family is not in line with the direction that I was heading. But thank God he left it up to me. So he kind of went along. There was no fighting or something. He was totally confused and not on board for himself. The co-sleeping thing that Rivkah's talking about, we did that for 22 years, I guess, from one child until they're ready to leave the bed, and then they leave, and then the next one. But in the beginning, my husband's like, what's going on here? Why are there children in our bed? This is our bed, But as he sees the relationship developing, the calm child, when I needed to nurse, I didn't run into the other room because the baby was crying. He was right there. So he just nursed. He didn't wake up my husband. He barely woke me up. The baby wakes up calm. The children wake up calm. They go to sleep calm. Like everything is just so soothing that he himself was kind of soothed, and he just went along with it because there was really nothing wrong with it, but he definitely didn't know what the heck was going on. And now it's been 22 years, thank God. And he just kind of follows suit. So he's there. He's not super active in all of this, but now that it's been 22 years, he's learned a lot just from observing. That's just kind of been our thing. I don't put him into the set because he's not comfortable. If I say you have to be this kind of father, as he would freak out and back away. But because he's an observer, and then every once in a while he puts in, he'll read the children bedtime stories, whatever, because it's coming from him. As long as I leave him the pressure off, he kind of just follows suit. That's just my husband. That's how it's been.
So, Chava, I have a very similar situation, really similar story. My husband worked really late. He would be away most of the day and sometimes till 11 p.m. midnight, etc. So I did a lot of this on my own, and my husband was also, not same thing, what is co-sleeping? Some things he was more supportive of, and some things he was like, you do it, you do your thing. I want to emphasize that there is no one way of co-sleeping. Co-sleeping can mean having a newborn, toddler, and preschooler, and if you have room for even more in the bed, we can sing the whole song. There were 10 in the bed. It can mean just having a newborn with you and a toddler on a mattress, or it can mean taking the crib. We had a crib. My first daughter actually slept in her crib right next to my bed. And from then on, it was used as storage, great storage, or at some point, the side was taken down and it was hooked to my bed sidecar. So when I had a newborn toddler and a preschooler, all, a 3.5-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a newborn sleeping, co-sleeping, it just made it easier to have one in that little corner and 2 on the other side. So again, there's also really cool, trendy things you can buy that are called co-sleepers. If it makes someone feel more comfortable and that works for them, that's great. You can put a bassinet right next to your bed. And I would like to add that for a new mom and a newborn, getting up to have to change and nurse the baby is exhausting. And it's divinely designed. We get more rest and sleep if we don't have to actually get out of bed. We can change a baby's diaper in bed, and we can nurse lying down and dreamily fall back to sleep along with our baby. I would also like to mention Dr. James McKenna. He's called the Sleep Doctor. A short Google search and you'll come up with him. He's actually done a lot of research. His, I think, biggest research is mother-baby, the back and forth, the REM sleep, the waking up. And he's done research actually that points to where sleeping with our babies helps them to breathe. As we breathe out and they breathe in, it signals them to continue breathing, and has been shown to actually prevent SIDS to a degree. So there is that beautiful research, as well as he has a book and he has articles for those who are concerned about safe co-sleeping. McKenna goes into that, and he gives tips on how to co-sleep safely if you're not comfortable with that, as well as a lot of other tips. So I thought it's important to mention that, because you may not be aware that there is actually really good research on that.
I want to come back to the topic of the fathers. Men are critical in the lives of their children. I mean, every bit as important, in a very, very different way than the mother. So important. And so, yes, there's, obviously there's single parent families and all of this, and, these parents are doing incredible, amazing things, but this isn't the ideal situation for the child. I have a similar husband situation as Gilla and Chava do, but I have to say, and I won't speak for them, but there were years where having my husband be able to cuddle a couple of the many children while I was cuddling some others or breastfeeding others was so important. And being able to trade off, where it's like, well, I want Abba in my bed. Well, I want mommy in my bed, and this and that. It's like, okay, Abba's going to be with you while I'm nursing the baby, and I'm, just all of that. But as far as the creating a warm, I don't know, Abigail, what specifically, Abigail came out and is coming back. What specifically Abigail was asking about, if it was just bedtime or kind of a general question, you can clarify if you want. But as far as bedtime, outside of the breastfeeding, the fathers can and ideally would do everything we're talking about: cuddling the children, reading stories to the children. My husband makes up fabulous stories when he's with the kids and, next them, tucking them into bed or cuddled up in a bed with them. He makes up story, our daughters are princesses, our sons are princes, and, they're always eating their favorite food, their favorite junk food in the stories and whatever. So yes, very, very important, especially for daughters and especially for sons in very different ways. But in general, my husband had concerns about having children in our bed all the time, because obviously we're a married couple who would like some time alone without children. And so there's always a balance. So it could be that, you know, you start with the children in their beds. Obviously, a nursing baby is a separate issue that we could spend a whole other hour talking about the halacha about that and all the other things. But, you know, even for a toddler, having them in their own bed, starting in their bed. I know that some of my kids are going to be in my bedroom in about 3 hours. That's just how it is in the night. But we make sure that we can carve some time away. Also, if you have another space in your house, you know, sometimes just being able to like cuddle with your husband on the couch and whatever, if the kids are in your bed or whatever, you can find other spaces to have alone time and space. The other thing is that, you know, I still think my husband wishes that maybe the kids went to bed at like 7, like all the Dawn kids or the school kids or whatever, so that we'd have like these whole evenings to do, I don't know what, watch Netflix or something, which I have no interest in doing anyway. But the thing that I've explained to him many, many times, and thankfully, you know, he's ultimately agreed, is that this is a very short time in our lifetimes. The children are little and need to be in our bed for just a few short years in the grand scheme of life. And, you know, with our teens, obviously they don't come in our bed. Like that time has passed. So just remembering that this too shall pass, just like breastfeeding. You're not going to breastfeed. You're not going to change diapers forever. You're not going to breastfeed forever. Kids grow up and it changes. Let's see if we have anything else. The connection between the father and the child if the mom is all the time there. You know, sometimes I have women tell me that they can't breastfeed their children because they're taking away from the husband's bond with the child. And I think that we need to acknowledge that the bonding that Hashem has set up for us is different. Breastfeeding and a close connection with the mother for a young baby is part of what Hashem has built in to the system, that a young child really needs his mother. And you will see, I think the way the father can best participate is, like we talked about, being another parent who can cuddle and hold and read stories and give baths and do baby massage and, you know, set up the warm, nurturing environment. And when the child is acting out, go and give him a hug and whisper in his ears. You know, the mother can step back a bit. I do when my husband gets back from work sometimes, and just let him kind of go and greet the kids and spend some time without me hovering around. And, you know, I take that time to go like do something else for me so that he can kind of check in. But there are certain things that are really specific that Hashem created for mothers to do, such as breastfeeding, such as pregnancy. And those things are really important, extremely important. And it's not something that needs to be shared equally, feeding a baby. There'll be plenty of time for Abba to make food for the child. Years and years and years for Abba to make food. But there are other ways to bond.
Also, you know, just having 2 extra hands. I've found that his time for bonding would be when I'm, you know, making dinner or busy doing some chore that has to be done with 2 hands that I can't do while I'm hugging everyone or whatever. And he, you know, he probably doesn't even realize because he's not in that space, but how important that time is to just sit with them and tell them what'd you do today? And, you know, you guys want to read a book or tell us whatever. I mean, he does it in his own way. And there is a massive, strong bond, you know, even though he didn't want to forge it, he wasn't working hard to do it. Just when I'm busy and he comes home from work, as that's their time. And they're, you know, they find their own magic, whatever, without having to name it or anything, but just that time spent, I guess, even when they go outside and, you know, look through the toolbox. They all love doing that. So there's always something, and the men, meaning husbands, they find their own way. They're not women, they don't do it the same way, but definitely bonding. Even
the fathers can even sit with the toolbox with a baby and say, hey, look at this wrench. Babies love that stuff. And that's building a bond and a connection. You know, even if the baby can't, you know, here, feel the wrench, feel how it feels smooth. doing things that, that's also a way to set up gender roles in your house, sharing the things that mommy does and the things that daddy does. These things are different. Sometimes they overlap. Sometimes, mom and dad can fix the toilet, do whatever. That's fine too. But I'm saying that there's a womanly way, just like when Moshe was instructed to teach the Torah. So Hashem says, speak first to the woman with gentle words, with kind words, with descriptive terms, all this, and then go to the men and give them the hard and fast rules. That's not a direct quote. rough quote. And so it's the same sort of thing. The mother's connection with the child is in a womanly way, and the father's connection with the child is in a fatherly way. And no one needs to step on one another's toes. It's not all about, I know you didn't ask about nursing or bottles, but I hear this so often as the reason why bottles are important and bottles are good. They're not important and they're not good. You can throw all the tomatoes you want. There are women who have difficulty nursing, and thank God there's formula and bottles and whatever, if there's like a reason that they're unable to nurse, but that is a very rare minority. It's best to breastfeed your child, have that bonding, have that closeness. There aren't even words to describe it. Just do it, and you'll see how much you gain from doing it. We should probably wrap up. So any final thoughts from Lowell? Do you want to jump in and do you have any thoughts you want to share?
Oh, well, I'm gonna ask my wife and girls to pay attention, especially to what you said about snacks and blood sugar levels, because that may be the holy grail to solve a lot of problems. And it's a basic principle, for example, in science, that if you can find a simple explanation for something, you choose it over the more complicated one. Now, that doesn't mean that that's always true, but that's sort of a rule of thumb. So problems can be solved simply by seeing there's a peanut butter sandwich or an egg or whatever it is, in little snack little snack bags. If that can solve all sorts of problems, like your son taking a knife out. I want to kill my brother, taking the kitchen knife. Well, you didn't have enough, peanut butter sandwich, or whatever it is. Then that's something every mother should know about, so especially for my wife with the nursery school, which I think she keeps them gobbling and snacking all day long. I guess she already knows that, but I'm going to have them ask them to listen to that.
Great. Any final words from the panel until we see you next time?
Okay, so thank you, ladies, and looking forward to our third episode. And I'm going to stop the recorded section in a moment and move into gallery view for open discussion for any of you who want to stay. Just a second.